Right.
Welcome to Fatherhood Unity Month with Calvin Mann. This is brought to you by United Way and Campaign for Black Male Achievement. We took a journey to share fatherhood stories. My name is Calvin Mann, president and founder of Good Fathers Only and Encourage Me, I'm Young. And our special guest today is Jason Paulateer, a father, a good man, a community-driven man, a life man, just a great husband, and I had to get him on. Welcome, Jason.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Calvin. How you doing this afternoon?
Good, man. It's Father's Day, weekend, and everybody, had to be sheltered and, with this COVID. But, we jumped out here to make sure that June, we wanted to make sure that everybody knew how important fatherhood is and the information that fathers could get. And yours is one story that I wanted to make sure, because there are a lot of fathers out here who do not have children, who refuse to even look at taking on children, really searching around, and they've gotten puppies, they got cars, houses, but want a kid, but can't find the right mate, all of that. So I wanted to talk about adoption. You're very familiar. And so I would love for you to start by, sharing your story.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for this opportunity, man. The series that you put together makes me feel like I've been celebrating Father's Day all month, right, as opposed to just this weekend. So I certainly appreciate that. So my story, man, it goes when my wife and I first got together 23 plus years ago now. We just celebrated our 23rd wedding anniversary earlier this week. But when we got together, thank you, I appreciate that. When we got together 23 plus years ago, we gave birth to a son, Jason Jr. And Jason came here with a heart defect. And by the time Jason was a month old, he passed away of that heart defect. The interesting thing was, or the curious thing was, he had the day after he died, he was supposed to go and see a cardiologist. But that was a pretty devastating, as you might imagine, young man, I think I was 22 at the time, 22, 23 years old at the time. Terrified of the idea of becoming a father, first of all, and then to have pass away at a month old was a pretty devastating. It was a pretty heavy blow. But the interesting together, or at the time, me and my girlfriend closer together. So the next year we actually got married. And then again in 99. And the curious thing about all of that was that my wife was not supposed to be able to have children, right? So proof that God is always on the throne, right? And always has the final answer. After we delivered our second baby girl, we decided we would actually try to plan our family. And so we said, okay, that's enough of the madness, right? Let's see if we can plan this thing out. And so about 4 or 5 years later, we decided we wanted to try for a boy again. Well, we missed, and we had another girl. And so, but that pregnancy was so devastating on my wife, it almost took her out of here. She was on bed rest for 8 of the 9 months of the pregnancy. And so we decided that there was that we wouldn't go that route anymore. So, I raised my hand and said, Coach, take me out the game. We don't need to do that again because I ain't trying to kill my baby. But at that point, we decided that there was one surefire way that we could guarantee that we could raise a little boy, because we both still had a desire to raise a little boy. And so on my wife's leading, we started looking into the adoption and foster care system. You want me to keep going, or you want?
Yeah, do you think? Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
Sure.
So we started looking into that system because at the time we were part of a small church over in the Grand Rapids community, and we were a part of this small group, and a number of two couples in the group had adopted, and it was interesting because we sat around in one of our small group activities and did a bucket list, right? Each family, each couple did their own bucket list. And on my wife's bucket list was adoption, right? That was not on my bucket list because, I was still trying to figure out, how to be a dad to the girls that I had given birth to. But being an obedient husband and being a supportive husband, she and one of the group members decided that they would go and check out adoption agencies, since it was interesting. It was on everybody's bucket list, even the ones who had already adopted. And so they decided that they wanted to go and check out some adoption agencies. And I said, what the heck? I was working, right? And so my office was like around the corner from the adoption agency that they were going to visit. So I was like, I'll meet y'all there.
Right.
And so I showed up and, had a couple conversations. That adoption agency didn't end up working out, but we went to check out another one, and ended up enrolling in what they call the Pride training class. It's like an orientation for people who are interested in fostering or adopting from within the Michigan adoption system or Michigan foster care system. And once I learned of the demand, if you will, it was like, okay, how many of these babies can I get? And because, as I went through that orientation, they really lay it out for you. They say, well, here's the, at the time there was like 15,000 babies in Michigan alone who didn't have what they call forever families, who didn't have a mother and a father. They were essentially, the state was essentially their parents, right? And as I started to think about that, I grew up with both my mom and pops at the house. But as I started to think about that, I was thinking, where would I be today if it wasn't for my mother and father?
Right.
Right. I couldn't imagine. I literally couldn't imagine. It's really still can't imagine being raised by the state. And so, I raised my hand immediately and was like, okay, how many of these babies can we get? How soon can we get them? And where do I sign? It's a little bit more complicated than that, as you might imagine. But when you look at the need, man, it is tremendous. And so long and short of the story is we started down that path. We ended up getting our foster care license. And which is a whole nother show in and of itself, right?
Right.
But we ended up getting our foster care license because we had a couple of parameters, right? So in this whole unknown, right, we wanted to be sure that we could raise kids that we had the ability to raise, right? So we didn't think that we could raise medically fragile children, right? We wanted to try to maintain some semblance of our birth order, right? We already had the oldest child in my daughter, right? And so we had some very specific parameters, and we wanted the kid that we look for, we wanted him to be a Black boy, right? And so with those parameters, in working with the agency, they were like, so the best thing for, given what you're trying to do, the best thing for you to do would be to get a foster care license to get into the system, understand the system, work with some kids, and then determine, what kids you would want to take on, what kid you would want to take on as a forever family. And so we did that, and we almost immediately we ended up meeting a young man. So we were the story goes, or my version of the story anyway, is we were at Target one day, and my wife ran into a friend of ours who actually is still a good friend to us today. And we were going in, she was running out, like she was booking, like, we like, what's going on? And she said, I gotta go. I gotta place one of my babies. And we were like, okay. So a couple days later, she and my wife got on the phone together, and my wife's like, what do you mean you had to go, place one of your babies? She said, so she kind of laid out where she was and what she was doing. And it turns out she was working for the agency that we were working with. He was on the adoption side, and we were working with the foster care side. So our paths had never crossed at the agency, right? So one thing led to another. They ended up going to lunch. And while at lunch, they started sharing pictures, right? So she had taken my oldest daughter several years earlier on a summer vacation with her and her family. And so, they were catching up on all of that stuff, right? So my wife's sharing pictures, and she started sharing pictures of her kids. Now, this lady was not married, didn't have a husband, didn't have any babies, but she had a wallet full of her kids. These were all of her kids on the under the state program. And so she ended up showing my wife a picture of a young man and his brother. And for whatever reason, his face stuck with my wife after they left. So, so much so that she started dreaming about this kid. Like, I wonder what's going on. And, and she told me, she ended up telling me about it. And I said, well, you should probably call the agency and inquire about him, see what's going on with him. So she called the agency, asked about him, and it turned out that he was in foster care placement, but preparing to be adopted. And so she's like, okay. So one thing led to another, and as we're going through our process, we're still taking the classes, we're getting our house ready to bring additional children in, and that friend called and said, hey, my sister is a foster parent, and she's looking to go on take her family on vacation, but they don't want to take their foster kids with them. Plus, they were getting ready to. She was retiring from the foster care system, and she was like, I don't want to set up an uncomfortable situation for him, because he'll probably be leaving my house soon. And so, asked if we would be willing to provide respite care for them. This was like right around Thanksgiving, Christmas, and we were like, okay, whatever, that's cool. We're licensed now, the house is ready and all of that good stuff. Well, the house is almost ready. Right. But we'd be willing to do that. So they were like, yeah, so they were going to come to stay with us like 2 weekends later, right? And we're looking around, we're like, okay, well, so we've gotten most of the stuff ready, but we weren't expecting to bring anybody in just yet. We don't have a bedroom set up for them. So we're sitting around the kitchen table with our other two daughters, who are like 7 and 8 at the time. And we're talking about this, and our daughters raised their hand and said, so what if there's 2 boys coming? What if we allowed them to have our rooms and we camp out, we do a sleepover on the dining room floor? Well, my wife and I looked at each other. We looked around, like, okay, well, who are you? And what have you done with our children, right? Because, prior to that, if we, in all parents think this, if our children look to be selfish and, all of these bad things, right? And you're like,
right.
wow, that's pretty generous. So that happened, right? So the boys came to stay with us. Ended up being him and his brother. The kid that my wife had seen in the photograph that she had inquired about.
Wow.
Who was getting ready to be adopted. So they came to stay with us for a weekend, and for me, so at this point I had 3 daughters at home. And for me, it was a big deal because I got a chance to play with some boy toys, as opposed to Barbie and Cabbage Patch and all of those types of things.
Right.
So the fellas came and they stayed with us, and when they went back, it was kind of hard for us to let them go, right? But because she was looking to get out of the foster care business, if you will, they were looking for a placement. And it turns out that their adoption had fallen through.
Oh.
So, right. And so we were like, oh, well, that's interesting. Is it possible that we can foster these boys? Right. We were just looking for one, but since they're together, we're willing to take 2. We're willing to foster 2. And the agency agreed with that. And so within a couple months, this was like 2006, 2007. So my memory is getting a little fuzzy on the exact details, but within a couple of months, those 2 boys came to live with us. And we subsequently found out that they had 3 more siblings that was in the system in different placements.
Right.
So they were kind of all over town, man. It was crazy. And we were like, it would be, conversation between me and my wife got real interesting. And it was like, so you think we would want to adopt these 2? And I'm still I was just looking for one boy.
Right.
But I couldn't possibly turn away his brother, right? Particularly since he's been here. And it was interesting because they were they were really laid back kids. And it was like, okay, if they're all like this, I could do 1 million of these, right?
Right.
So we started having these conversations around, whether or not we could adopt those 2. And, my wife is the go-between between the family and the agency, right? And so she's talking with the agency. They did all the measurements because you have to have so many square feet per kid and all of this stuff, right? So we went through all of that. Well, we ended up doing sibling visits with their other siblings that were out in the system. And got to know their
go ahead.
Okay, got to know their foster families and foster parents. And it turned out that they were pretty cool kids too. And so and all of them were starting to get to the point where the agencies only want to deal with kids without forever family for a short period of time after parental rights have been terminated from their family, right? They don't want to keep these kids in the foster care system forever, which was a aha moment for me because prior to this, everything I knew about foster care was you go into the foster care system and you're always in the foster care system. Well, that ain't true, right? That's not true. What they're actually looking to do is get kids placed with families as soon as possible once parental rights has been terminated. And so that was starting to happen for the boys, parental rights had already been terminated, but their adoption fell through. For their siblings, the parental rights hadn't been terminated yet, but they were coming up on that. And so, the discussions became, you think it would be possible if we adopted? It was 5 of them all together. What if we brought all of them in? I don't know. Okay. Well, we can't separate the family. So, yeah, if the agency will let us do it, why don't we give it a shot, right?
Right.
Never know what's possible. So we did that. We started talking to the agency about, potentially taking on all the kids as foster kids. And so the first two came to live with us in early 2007. The next set was a set of twins. So the older boys was three and four, and then there was a set of twins who were two about to turn three, and then there was a baby, a little girl who was a set of twin boys, and then there was a baby, a little girl who was one, going on two, right? And so we were like, okay, so they came to live. The first two came to live with us early that year. The second two moved in June of that same year. No, this was 2008. And the baby girl came to live with us in October of the same year. And then almost maybe 6 months to the date that they came to live with us. So we ended up finalizing adoption for the oldest two December of that year, and then rolled into the next year to finalize adoption on the last three. And so we went from a family of three girls, to a family of 4 girls and 4 boys. Even Steven, right? We're set. And so things were going well. You know, we're figuring out, you know, how to live with 10 folks in the house, 10 folks in the house, 8 babies. Our oldest girls, man, stepped up like you wouldn't believe and became tremendous older sisters. But in all of that, you know, figuring out how do you travel with 10 people?
Right.
One family, right? My daughter was playing volleyball on a travel team. What hotel can you stay in?
Right.
You go out to dinner, which we didn't do too often because it was, you know, like paying a house note. But where can you go and feed this many folks and not go broke?
Right.
Right. How do you go to the movies? Like all of this stuff. Right. But we slowly but surely we figured it out, man. But fast forward, so that was 2008, 2009. Fast forward, 2014, the agency called us, and the agency said, "So, what y'all doing?" What you think we doing? We trying to raise a family of 8 while maintaining our sanity. Plus, we relocated. Oh, I left this part out. We relocated from Grand Rapids to Southeast Michigan in the middle of all of this, right? So, and that's the story in and of itself. The way that the Lord just lined everything up on our behalf, right? But so the agency called and said to my wife, "Yeah, so your baby's mom had another child, and you know they're going through the process, right? There's still some issues out there, but the baby is in the foster care system. But we would like for her to get to know her siblings. Would you guys be open to that?" And so we were like, "Yeah." So we started doing these sibling visits, man. Just thinking, you know, in case we end up having to adopt this baby, that she would know us, right? Because, you know, you've done enough research around this to know that attachment really happens within that first year of birth, right? And we didn't want, if she ended up becoming our foster child or even our adopted child, we didn't want that eventual thing to be the first time that we really connected with her. And so from the moment she was born, we were doing sibling visits with her and the various foster families that she was with. And just like we kind of figured that we'd probably end up with her, but they ended up terminating parental rights for her. I want to say she was either 6 or 8 months old. And her foster family was in line to adopt her. But it turns out that the agency had a desire to keep the siblings together, and if we were open to it, then they would really much prefer her to be with her siblings. And so fast forward to August of 2015. And so the reason that's so cemented is because my oldest daughter graduated high school June of 2015. And she came to live with us the weekend after my daughter's open house, right? And so, so I was thinking in my mind, okay, we got one going off, so we're sending her away to college. We got one coming in, so we're still even, right? We know we can do this already, so we're good. And so that all worked out pretty good, but it was interesting having a toddler back in the house again. Because the age difference between her and the next one, I think so she was 2, the next one at the time was 9, right? And so there's and I'm 10 years older, right? So there's that too. So fast forward, the following September, we get another call from the agency.
Oh,
yes. And my wife is in the throes of making a decision as to whether she's going to go back to work or not. And she's literally got a couple phone calls that she needs to make. She needs to return, and she gets a voicemail from the agency. So she calls me in the office and she says, "Are you sitting down?" And I said, "The last time you called me and asked me if I was sitting down, we ended up with another baby. What do you want?" So she said to me, she said, "I got 2 voicemails." She said, "I got one from the school, my job, and I've got one from the agency. Which one do you think I should call first?" I said, "You got to call the agency first, because that's probably what they are calling to tell you probably will determine the fate of your employment."
that's right. That's right.
So sure enough, she called the agency and they were like, "When you want to come get your baby?" She was like, "Wait, what?" They say, "Yeah, your children's mom had another child. She's
Wow.
We're going for immediate termination, and she needs a family. So if you guys are open to it, we need to know when can you come pick her up." And so now I'm 11 years older, and and she is literally. They called us literally the day after she was born. She came to live with us at a week old.
Wow.
And so now we have 12. Now there's 12, and the rest is, as they say, history.
And so that in itself, right? You guys need to be writing a book literally titled Why Love and Adoption Works.
Mm,
Yeah. Why love and
I
adoption
like
works.
that. I like
So
that.
when we talked about it before, I was expressing how my family has always been into adoption, foster care, right? My sister
Yeah, I
and
remember you
my
telling me
auntie,
that.
yep, actually, to give you some great news, I'm literally sitting on a foster care board and just designed a magazine cover for foster care,
Really?
literally.
Nice.
So,
Nice.
so we are children and why fatherhood. So your story impacts a number of men, right? We have men where men don't really want to step up in this area, and they should. And here's why. And I say this, your story just impacts that across the board. Why should I do it? When should I do it? I got, like I said, I got family members that have been fully indoctrinated into their family and treated, with love, right? From all age groups,
Yep.
and your story just impacted that again. But the the part where your office was literally around the corner, right?
Literally around the corner. Yeah.
Literally around the corner is just how God do things. Like, so how long did it, what was the paperwork like, for some people that might be considering it, because I know um, the foster care, we're literally looking to change that whole outcome dynamic. We got some real nice people on the board. It's with the city, so we're really looking to change that outcome, right? I know, how important fathers are.
Yes, sir.
So my thoughts and idea is to get as many fathers in these kids' lives, right? How do we get them in life? So, you know, we've been switching over our stuff, uh, encouragement young to go after suicide, right? Because our boys are leaders. And so all the kids that come out of our mentoring program are the leaders that the community need at a young age. And so we're targeting, because with our mentoring program, we smash suicide. But on the other side of that, that foster care suicide is extremely high,
Mm.
right? They're getting ready to be a number of kids age out of the foster care system with no love,
With no
um,
family.
no family, right? We need to be, instead of, you know, only getting what I estimate from the information I have, only what, a 12% success rate out of that situation where there's so many resources there. How do we get that success rate up into the 40s and the 50s, right? And where we now are re-establishing families and our conversation as a people, and we have to get away from the individualism and get back to family. We used to, back in the day, take care of each other's kids, you know, even during the whole slavery exchange. Everyone looked out for each other's kids to protect them from the elements. We integrated and we stopped doing so. So my question to you is, uh, what is the right steps to get into adoption? Is it by going foster care first, or is it that seeking adoption? I had a friend went out of the country, and him and his wife adopted two kids from an African community.
Yeah. So for me, it's always been, I'm a big believer of put on your oxygen mask first before you try to help the next person, right? So we never, while I understand there are issues in other countries and other places around the world where uh, it's a great need. For us, it was always, there's issues right here at home,
Yep.
right? And so all of our kids are from our local.
Right.
They were actually born in, some of them were born in Lansing, but they lived in Grand Rapids at the time. And so for me, it's always been, you know, take care of home first. And so the process, so there, for us, it was two different processes, right? It was that first set of documentation, and then it was years later with the second set coming in. We actually had to reopen. We had closed our foster license. We had to reopen it in order to bring in the next set of babies. So the first time around, it was it's a pretty intense process, right? It's synonymous with trying to get a job, right? Because technically you are trying to get a job as a foster parent. You become part of the fabric of the foster care and adoption system as a foster care worker. Now you're a foster care, you would be a foster parent, but you're a part of that system. And the whole purpose of that system is reunification or forever family, right? So they essentially, we essentially want kids to go back to their bio family,
Right.
if at all possible. But if that's not possible, want to be able to place them with a forever family who can love and take care of them.
Right.
So it's literally like a job application. So there was a ton of paperwork, but your ability to really work through that process hinges a lot on the agency and the worker that you work with, right? And I learned that on the second set. Hinges a lot on that because there's so much paperwork and there's all these deadlines that you really have to work closely with your foster care licensing worker in order to do that. Now, you don't have to go through the foster care licensing system in order to adopt from the Michigan Adoption Exchange. But that was the way that we chose to go because of all of the kind of parameters we had put in place around who we thought that we could take care of. The other thing is to be really clear and realistic about the level of need that you think that you personally or that your family could support in a young person. Like if they're born to you, you kind of get what the Lord brings, right? But in a foster care situation, there's from the extremely medically fragile in there all the way through to, you know, what we call normal, right? And for us, we knew that we could not adequately care for a medically fragile child because we didn't think we had what it took in order to do that. And so I think being really clear about that for your family is important. And the other thing, and the other thing is, if we're always waiting until we're ready to do something, we wouldn't do anything, right? I think the saying goes, God doesn't call the prepared; He prepares the call.
Yep.
Right, and so you step into it, and He just work it out for you. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
that is completely our story.
Yeah. That's hey brother, that's a whole nother show. Because
Right.
Because if you are waiting, right? I mean, you can look at a community and say, waiting when he's already provided is a waste of time. Right?
Absolutely.
You got to take the steps. So, like you said, you can't wait. You know, if it's something you got to act on.
So your heart, you just got to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In all the things that you've seen in this, from the adoption to the foster care agency, do you know anything about the AFC homes? And just here's another dynamic where you can grab. I seen where a grandfather had been literally adopting boys through the foster care system for 40 years. So he had all of these kids that he had been just adopting through the system, right? And I'm very concerned, right? So your information is on point. This is where I really want to do it. But I'm very concerned that when we say our people, when we say, you know, that we want to do something, it's our people, unity, right? That we forget completely different segments of what is our people. Right. And so what does family look like? You know, again, this is why I'm yelling and screaming at dads, right, to unite, because there are children, schools, communities, classrooms, you know, what do you call you know, community service. These are areas for which you're needed right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not the fact that you're the proof that we talk about how one father can take on more than just his kid.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is why I guess you're wearing that Superman boy, and I got a beautiful Superman shirt myself, right? With the Superman logo with the GFO, right? But I'm with you. Like this is how powerful God made us. The system tried to dwindle fatherhood. Everybody want to try to knock fatherhood down, and now we see what we look like without it. And so somehow we gotta bring it back together, and then raise the men, smash the murder rate, right? Right? How you smash? You gotta put the murder rate down. You gotta take suicide, pull it down. You gotta bring literacy up. You gotta bring family up, right? And we gotta get back to we, us, she, me, right? Culturally, right? And we also
fatherhood has an impact on all of that.
On all of that.
Absolutely all of that.
Yeah. On all
positively and negatively, but certainly positively.
Positively. Most definitely.
Yeah.
And so, you know, my other question to that is for you is, now that you've done it, do you see yourself not having to have done it?
I actually don't. I can't. I can't see it. I don't. Yeah. No. No.
Because they're everywhere. See, I grew up like that. What you have, I grew up like that. We were everywhere. And
Right. So we've been, we've been in quarantine since March, right?
right.
So we've been breaking the social gathering laws. the whole. Look, it's just us two talking, right?
Right.
Because all 10 of them are at the house right now, are at the house, right? And so there's 12 of us that's been in quarantine together since March.
Right.
And, nobody's bleeding.
Right.
Nobody's hurt. Relationships are forming. It's been incredible, man. It's been absolutely incredible.
Yeah. I know he didn't mean for it to go like this, but this COVID-19 has brought love to a lot of people, man. And so God had to intervene and really, it has brought love to a lot of people. Some people may never ever change to see the change, but it has really brought love to a lot of people. And some people who come out of this should come out of better. I know I came out a much better person.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I've been saying from the beginning to my wife, I said, we're going to learn some stuff during this quarantine. We're going to come out of this different people than we went into it. Yep. And I'll be darned if it ain't been true.
Yeah.
My 15-year-old son who, man, it's just been tremendous watching this dude grow in this, actually him and his twin in this space. The one said to me, he said, this online learning thing might be better for me than going to school. I looked at him like, you came up with that on your own? He said, yeah. Like, okay. He said, I'm doing so much better in all of my classes than I ever was when I was going to school. I'm like, wow, okay. I like that. And then his twin, this dude, again, on his own, not characteristic of him, right? These are uncharacteristic ahas that I'm calling out. This dude then applied for and got a job at Kroger. He started tomorrow at Kroger on his own. And then last night he prepared dinner for everybody without being asked. I'm like, what is really going on here? Right? So this thing is changing folks, man. Changing folks for the better. It's crazy.
Hey, my son is at McDonald's. I literally got emotional when I walked in and saw him work. That's not the plan I had for him, a vision. You know how fathers are. We have different visions for our kids. That wasn't the vision that I had for him, but when I walked in and the lady said, you raised a beautiful son. And I honestly, I said, please don't say that in front of his mama. Whatever you do, right?
Right.
She said, well, I said, well, that's good. He is a good kid. He is a good man. He cooks. That boy can cook, all that. And he's same right there, same age, just turned 16. And he wanted to get a job. I wanted to see him lifting some weights, running some routes, catching some touchdowns, cracking some, you know what I mean? But he's been, it's just one of those things, one of those environment things. So, Jason, this is perfect. You really answered everything. It was just important that we had to have this adoption conversation because, again, we as a community, as a people, right? I'm sure we know what all the problems. We jump into problems, we react.
Right.
Let's jump on some solutions. Like I was on a call and I couldn't think of even responding to the problem. So everything that's coming out of my mindset is how do we solve it, right?
What's the solution? Yeah.
The solution, right? I'm sure.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to have this emotion, but for me, I'm like, well, why don't we just do this? Or why don't we look here? And my son, I did an interview with over in Britain on fatherhood. It was a great interview. And my son listened to it. And he called me on the phone. He said, man, you said something on that call, man, that could literally change the world, Dad. He said, I don't know if you know, but that piece you talk about sharing, if we did that nationally, globally, I believe that we'll be able to help and impact everyone, because what it is everyone has to engage with each other. So you got to engage with somebody homeless. You got to engage with somebody fractured. You got to engage with somebody hurt. You got to listen to some a drunk or a dope fiend, right? You got to and you're sharing each other's information and story, right? A day of share, right? And he was like, man, you might want to see about that. I was just telling him, I was like, son, all I know is solutions right now. This was a problem. Here's a problem. We got all these men looking to have kids that don't have kids, wanted to have the perfect person. And here you come. Hey, but over here, man, we adopt, we got kids, we got a beautiful family. The foster care even help you. So it ain't like you're gonna take on this burden all yourself. You just get you a couple of foster care. So in my mindset, I made a promise to God, like I told you when we first met, that when I got to a certain financial success, which, like you just said, I can't wait. So it's got to be a conversation. Can't wait. So it's got to be a conversation for me, because I want some more to adopt and put my last name on as many of them as I can, bro.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care. I don't care what they say. They're gonna be whatever the case may be. That's just something I want to do, and I didn't care what culture, but I wanted boys, because boys are the least mentored, least adopted, least foster cared for, first in daycare to be kicked out, first and kicked out of kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, first, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, right? They always want to kick them boys out. Black boys first, right?
Yeah.
The suicide levels, the reason why we started Smash Suicide is because when I stumbled across a few years ago that black boys, 5 to 12 is number one, white boys number two, Hispanic boys
Really?
3. 5 to 12, bro.
I did not know that.
We can't have that. You cannot have that at the base of a. Same thing I told when I spoke at the 2014 men issue. You can't have a culture, white males, Hispanic males, black males. You cannot have a culture where we're committing suicide. It says everything is wrong about us. So our mentoring program is
doing something right. Yeah.
And so our mentoring program is sweet, is growing, it's getting to the area. Hey, bring us some more. But now they're the leaders that's saying we're smashing suicide. So I wanted to share that with you, man. I wanted everybody to hear your story, man. I really appreciate your time. I know it's Father's Day weekend, man, and any and everything. If it's any message you'd like to leave it with them. I'm going to continue to talk after we get off of why I chose fatherhood.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the invite, brother. So you might look at me and think, well, you got a wife, right? Y'all got a partnership. You got a teammate to run this thing. But I heard a story last night, brother, that blew me away. Hill Harper is an adopted dad?
No, I didn't know he was adoptive.
He's an adoptive father. So, and he's a single adoptive father.
Man, I've been trying to get to that brother, man.
If you get a chance to check out his story, he was on Good Morning America. I think it was a couple years ago now, but he was on Good Morning America and he shared his story about adopting his little boy. And it, like he said, it changed his life. So I say that to say, while it may seem like, we got it all together, right? You got this amazing wife, he's got this amazing career. Kids just need somebody to love them, man.
Yep.
They really just need somebody to love them. And the situation that they find themselves in is not their fault, right? And it's and truth be told, their parents, their bio parents, love them. They just have, at the time, don't have the ability to care for them. right? And so they need us to stand in the gap for them. The community needs us to stand in the gap for them. The world needs me and my wife can do it. We just your average, ordinary, everyday people. If we can do it, anybody can do it. That's my word.
Well, Jason, thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, man. And you know, you can sign off at your own risk, man. This has been Fatherhood Unity Month with Jason Paulateer, my friend, brother, community leader, everything. Good man, good husband. We thank you. Thank you for teaching us what it is to adopt with love. My name is Kelvin Mann, president and founder of Good Father Encourage Me. I'm young, and that is Jason Paulateer. Brought to you by Campaign for Black Male Achievement and United Way. Thank you.
Love you, man.
Love you too.